a womanizer, black market businessman, and Nazi. That was what Oskar Schindler was thought of. Yet he was much more than that. To some, he was a hero, savior, and gentleman. We may never know Schindler's reasons for his heroic actions, but no one can disagree that he saved thousands of lives from the grasps of the Nazis. During the Holocaust, 1933 to 1945, Schindler, a high-ranking Nazi, took a life-endangering stand against the Nazis by providing work, shelter, and safety for more than 1,200 Jewish people. Going against the Nazis and imperiling his own life, Schindler provided humane conditions that protected many Jewish people from the horrors of the Holocaust. This saved thousands of Jewish people from dying and helped save the Jewish culture from extinction at the hands of the Nazis. Thanks to him, there are now over 1 million Jewish people alive today who otherwise wouldn't be.
Oskar Schindler was born on April 28, 1908, to a wealthy Catholic family. He had, quote, all the privileges one could buy, unquote. As he grew up, Schindler was lured to the black market. With the use of bargaining, alcohol, friendships with the Gestapo, and affairs with women, he was able to acquire a factory in the Krakow ghetto run by cheap Jewish labor.
Even though Schindler would start his career as a Nazi industrialist, he would change. In December of 1939, as the Holocaust started to get worse, Oskar Schindler took his first steps towards standing up to the Nazi regime.
On January 15, 1940, Schindler signed a lease agreement for his factory in Krakow. He hired cheap Jewish labor from the nearby Krakow ghetto. His factory, Deutsche Emelenwarenfabrik, German Enamelware Factory, or DEF, manufactured enamel goods and munitions for the German war front. He also used bargaining and under-the-table deals with high-ranking Nazi officials to get the workers he wanted. When Krakow was liquidated in 1943 and some of its occupants were moved to the nearby Plaszow concentration camp, Schindler used money and persuasion to make sure he could retain his workers and make sure they were moved to the Plaszow concentration camp. In July 1944, the Eastern Front of the Nazis started to fail. So Nazis started moving the Jewish people westward. They evacuated Plaszow and most were sent to Auschwitz-Birkenau or Gross-Rosen concentration camps. Schindler was alerted by the Nazis that his factory would be closed. However, Schindler bribed many top-ranking Nazi officials with money, expensive jewelry, and fine alcohol. This allowed Schindler to move all of his workers to Brunlitz camp and to open a factory there that made weapons for the German war front. The first load of workers arrived on October 15, 1944.
The workers on that shipment were part of the 1,200 Jews that famously made Schindler's List. Schindler went unimaginable and amazing lengths to stand up for these workers. He started by using almost his entire wealth and bribes for top-ranking Nazi officials to get the workers he wanted. By the end of the war, Schindler was bankrupt because of the money he had spent on bribes. This goes to show that Schindler would make great lengths to stand up for his workers. At one point, after watching Jewish people taken away for a future of work and death, Schindler said, "Beyond this day, no thinking person could fail to see what would happen. I was now resolved to do everything in my power to defeat the system."
Although Schindler's actions may seem small, they would have huge consequences in the face of the Nazi regime. By sheltering Jewish people and providing humane working conditions, he could have faced almost certain death. Also, when Schindler created his list of workers going to his second factory, Schindler stood up for those workers and wouldn't accept any others, just the ones on his list. This could have also led him to prison or possibly worse. In fact, Schindler was sent to prison for a few nights twice, but each time, Schindler's secretary finagled him out. Finally, if Schindler was caught and tried, he would face embarrassment. During the Nazi regime, the average German was a Nazi. There were Nazi youth organizations that all German youth were required to join, and many were forced to join their local Nazi party chapter. Schindler would be made fun of by the German public for favoring Judenschwein over the Aryan race. If it weren't for Schindler's bribes, he would have certainly died and been humiliated by the German public. So in the end, Schindler was not just standing up to the Nazi regime, but also the status quo. Compared to other concentration camp experiences, the experience of the workers in Schindler's factory was like heaven. Conditions in concentration camps such as Auschwitz-Birkenau and Plaszow were unsanitary, disgusting, and whoresome.
People were bone thin, hungry, and often very, very sick. To add to the dehumanizing effects, inmates were tattooed with numbers. That was their new name. They were told to forget their names because they would be called by their numbers. People were also gassed or worked to death. On December 18, 2016, we were given the opportunity to interview Holocaust survivor Helena Silber, who was on Schindler's List. She has requested not to be videotaped. The following slides are words about her experiences. Helena Silber was one of 7 children living in Krakow, Poland during the Holocaust. While the rest of her family died, she was able to survive because she was number 16 on Schindler's List. Here are some facts and quotes about her story. Oskar Schindler's factory was different. While people slept at the concentration camps at night, they were protected from the horrors of the camps during the day and were protected from death. Schindler ordered his guards not to shoot any Jews. Schindler also made sure that his weapons factory did not help the Nazi war efforts at all. Schindler viewed all Jews as equal. He would talk frequently with the factory floor and talk with all the Jews. Leon Liason, a Schindler survivor, recalled that Schindler would frequently visit him and offer him food and cigarettes. Schindler also saved whole families, while many others were separated in the concentration camps. An example of this is the Rosner family. Also, he helped people outside his own factory. This shows that Schindler took a stand against the Nazis because he thought what the Nazis were doing was unjust and unfair. Schindler also stood up to the Nazis by allowing his workers to practice their religion freely inside the walls of his factory. A Holocaust survivor, Julius Eisenstein, said that his time spent at Schindler's factory was heaven compared to the hell of Plasitzow. He said he was spoiled and felt as though he was already liberated. According to Eisenstein, we ate a little better and we didn't get a beating every day and you could relax a little. The work was easier and we weren't tired every day. Julius believed that without his time in Amalia, Schindler's camp, he would not have survived the war.
In addition, Schindler was one of the only people that knew about the Nazis' horrific actions. The Nazis were excellent at deception. They put up propaganda and ads that suggested the idea that the Jewish people were fine in the concentration camps. Because of this, many countries and even German citizens did not know anything about the concentration camps. One American soldier was shocked when he found a concentration camp. It was like nothing I had ever seen before, he said. Thus, Schindler was one of the only people that could actually take a stand against the Nazis.
After the war, Schindler's life fell apart. He was hated in Germany for his sympathies with Jews and was not granted United States citizenship because he'd been a prior Nazi. He eventually settled in West Germany, but he was hated by everyone. People threw rocks at him and swore at him in the streets. However, the Schindler Jews were not about to leave Schindler to the dogs. They gave him donations and protected him in Israel. Schindler was eventually bestowed with the Righteous Among Nations Award for standing up in the face of hate and fear to save the Jewish people. He would spend the rest of his life relying on financial donations from the Schindler Jews he saved. He even wanted to be buried in Jerusalem because he felt so much love with the Jewish people. However, Schindler left behind a great legacy that outlived any riches one could have today. He was one of the people that saved the Jewish religion from extinction at the hands of the Nazis, and without him, the Jewish religion may not have been as widespread as it is today. He also stood up for thousands of Jewish people in the face of the Nazis. Thanks to him, the kindness in his heart, he has left behind over 1 million Jewish people. So, Schindler stood up to the Nazis for others, not just for himself.